Welcome to the Block Party, Episode 1. Official new name for the NBA Deep Dive podcast. I am joined by the one and only King Wells. How's it going, my dude?
Always good, man. Always good. It's a new name, but it's the same great taste.
New name, same great taste. New name, same game. So we are trying something a little different with the camera setup today. So we apologize for the delay. And we'll also be trying to upload this episode to YouTube as the first of many, hopefully. So without further ado, let's get right into it and discuss some stuff going on in the NBA. I have a few points written down here that I want to touch on. I think the one that's worth noting right off the gate here is I wanted to start with the Miami Heat. Because
Yes.
everything I've seen so far with Miami, and especially with Lowry last game, blending into this team and fitting into this team, fitting into this ball club, I think the expectations so far have exceeded most. I think we all kind of had a feeling they were going to be good, but so far expectations seem to have kind of surpassed what we thought initially. So I'm just curious on your thoughts with what you've seen from the Miami Heat so far, what you think this team's floor and ceiling is, and how far in the playoffs you think this team can go. Because right now it really does appear that sky is the limit for this team. So I'm curious on your take.
Well, I mean, to be honest, for me, I'm not. I don't think I'm. This isn't so exceeding the expectations for me. Maybe Tyler Hero, because he's playing at a level right now that if he can bring that off the bench all season and into the playoffs, that's a secret weapon. I mean, he was already a weapon, but that really makes that team scary. As far as everything else, I mean, Jimmy Butler's playing like an MVP right now. Some of the best basketball of his career. It's really fun to watch. And like you said, Lowry is fitting right in. I don't think anybody doubted that. He's just doing Lowry things, and Miami's going to love him as long as he's there. So, again, no real surprise there. I think as far as ceiling and floor and ceiling for them, with this team, to me, it just really depends on, and I hate to say it, but it just depends on their health. If they can stay healthy, I think they have a good chance of, they're up there with Milwaukee and Brooklyn for who should win in the East. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, everybody on the floor is just so smart, plays to their strengths so well, and their defense is going to keep them in every single game they're in. And they got Spo coaching them, right? I mean, he's one of the better and more experienced coaches in the NBA now. So, yeah, definitely, I would say I expect them to contend for the Eastern Championships, for the champion in the East. I mean, and anything less than that, I'd be probably disappointed.
Do you think it's fair to say that Jimmy Butler is possibly in that MVP conversation? And could this be a year that Jimmy's actually slides into maybe top 3 voting for the MVP if Miami finishes just say on top of the East with the
That's it. If they finish up there in the East, I don't think there's any reason for him not to be at least be in the conversation. The way he's playing right now, we've seen this from him before, but what the problem is that usually his team doesn't really back him up the same way. Not that he hasn't been on good teams, but it just usually didn't work out that way. But now it looks like the team is playing at the same level. Everybody's running on all cylinders right now. And, there's no reason. As long as both sides keep this up, there's no reason he shouldn't be in the MVP talk. Right now, I think he would be my leader probably. Without looking too deep into it, he'd probably be my pick for MVP right now.
So they're sitting at 6-1 on the year. They're tied with Chicago for that top seed. Well, I guess they're actually technically in 1 because they beat Chicago, I believe. Or were they the team? No, they didn't beat Chicago. I'm just trying to figure out why they would be 1, Chicago would be 2 if they're both 6-1. Anyways, they're tied, so 6-1, top of the East. You also got the Knicks at 3, 5-2. You got Washington sitting at 5-2. Philly's sitting at 5-2, and then you have the Raptors sitting at 5-3. In the next few weeks or so, do you think we'll probably see a shift? I would assume Brooklyn and Milwaukee sliding up, probably surpassing Washington and maybe like Charlotte, for instance, out of these kind of playoff seeding spots. You would say that's safe to assume that Milwaukee and Brooklyn in the next few weeks kind of. Now, granted, Milwaukee is dealing with quite a few injuries. Drew Holiday.
That's right.
You got Chris Middleton on COVID protocol. I think he actually got COVID. So a few injuries there. And then you also have Tobias Harris on Philly, who's going to be missing about a week probably with COVID. And obviously Ben Simmons not being back. So I guess my question to you is, how do you see this playing out in the next few weeks? I think Miami is safe to say that they'll stay on top. Do you think Chicago will continue to win at this pace as well? Do you think Washington will probably slide down this list a little bit, I would assume?
I think the East. The important thing with the East right now is what I'm starting to realize, and this is probably way too late, but I think the East is probably the strongest it's ever been, or at least for the last 20 years. And I mean, like as a whole, right? Like we're used to it where there's the Milwaukee's and the Raptors for a little bit, Cleveland when LeBron was there. You've got like, what I'm trying to say is you always had like 2 or 3 teams at the top of the East that were kind of hanging around at the top of the NBA, but everybody else in the East usually kind of fell pretty flat. But it doesn't seem that way this year. I do expect, teams like Washington, New York, to slide down a little bit. The Raptors too. But at the same time, I'm starting to give a little bit more respect to teams like Washington, teams like New York, teams like Chicago that maybe looks like it's just a hot start, but I think these are good teams. And I think overall, like I said, the East is just a lot stronger than it's ever been. And that's something that we all got to get used to.
I want to now jump to the West in this conversation. We have Utah sitting at 6-1. We have Golden State sitting at 5-1. Then you have the Lakers in the third spot, 5-3. I don't know if you saw any of the Lakers games over the last few days, but I would definitely say things are looking to be somewhat improved, especially with kind of the integration of Westbrook. You had the big three all scoring in double digits last night. I think they all were over 25. Do you think this Lakers team is going to get better as the year goes on? And do you think we'll see an improved Russell Westbrook in terms of shooting the ball, or do you think it's going to be more play to your strengths, know what you're good at, and kind of fiddle with these lineups as we go here? I don't know if you've seen any of the footage of LeBron from last night, but I've just been so impressed with how well he's moving. And obviously you're going to want to keep that athleticism and that kind of crisp LeBron ready for the playoffs, but I'm sure if the Lakers can get on some sort of a winning streak or some sort of a momentum push here, that we'll see a lot more of the ball going into Brody's hands and probably, LeBron taking a little bit of a step back. Do you think it's long before we see Westbrook at kind of full form or mid-season form? Or do you think this could possibly come sooner than most people anticipated?
I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but I fully expect it to get there. I mean, the same thing with the Lakers as a whole. I mean, they should get there. I don't know if it's going to happen sooner or later than people think, but I don't think it really matters too much either. I think as long as they get to clicking on all cylinders by the time the playoffs roll around, and they kind of avoid injuries like you mentioned, then they should be fine. And I fully expect them to do that. As far as the way they've been playing recently, I think it's a good sign. I would take still a bit of a grain of salt with it, considering the teams that they've been beating. Like last night, for example, I mean, it's probably the best game that they've all played together at the same time. But they only beat Houston by a couple points, I think. So
right.
Like a little bit of a grain of salt there. I'm not trying to shit on their parade or anything, but just to say that they still got some work to do to get there. It's a nice sign to see that it can happen, and that's what it looks like when it happens, no doubt about it. But I think it's going to take a little bit of time for them to gel completely, but I fully expect them to.
I want to talk about a team in the East that is struggling quite a bit that I can definitely see improving as the year goes on. That's the Boston Celtics. And more specifically, I want to touch on some news or I guess a storyline that's coming out of Boston, specifically from Marcus Smart regarding Tatum and Brown passing the ball. I'm not sure if you saw the quote, but he essentially said that in order for this team to win, we need our two best players, Tatum and Brown, to be willing to pass the ball. Right now, they're not willing to pass the ball. They're just willing to score. Do you think teams are obviously going in there and anticipating Brown and Tatum to carry that offense, but do you think we're going to need to see more of a playmaking side to those two in order for the Celtics to be successful, or could it be as simple as they're just not shooting the ball well right now, and that should hopefully go up in these next few weeks? Or do you think there needs to be a little bit more of a adjustment at the core, you could say, with how they're actually playing? Is Marcus Smart onto something?
I think. Well, Marcus Smart, I always respect his opinion, so I think he's definitely onto something. Especially, he's a defensive-minded guy, so he's looking at it from how would the other team game plan for his team, and I fully, I have all the confidence that he knows what he's talking about, so I wouldn't doubt him for a second. As far as them needing to change, I mean, I think that if you do move the ball around a little bit more, the shooting percentages do tend to go up just naturally anyways. It's kind of like an organic thing,
right?
When it goes that way. The question for me that I'm starting to ask myself with Boston is, it's not whether Tatum and Brown fit together, because obviously they do, and they can complement each other. But I'm starting to wonder if it's going to be possible for them to do it with, like, on equal footing. You know what I mean? Like, what I'm trying to say is that I think one of them is going to have to concede to the other one. Like, you need to have an alpha. You know what I mean? And I think that's going to have to be apparent to everybody, and them included at some point. Most people would probably say that should be Jason Tatum, but I mean, we've had this discussion, you and me, for a long time about both of them. Myself, I was a little bit more towards Brown. I think I like Brown a little bit more than I like Tatum. But I think one of them is going to have to just be the alpha, and the other one is going to have to accept that, and for them to get to their whatever their best is. That's just my opinion.
Right. No, I'm kind of in agreement with you there. I don't know how you can kind of dictate that or facilitate that if you're a head coach. I don't know if you can how you can necessarily say that to a guy like Brown, or I guess in the opposite end of things, a guy like Tatum, in terms of taking a step back, or maybe, you know, playing a little bit more passive, passing the ball a little bit more. One bright spot that I think is very, very, very noticeable this year so far for the Celtics has been Al Horford. I think he's been a tremendous fit coming back into the system. Now, it's not necessarily translating into wins, obviously, based on their record, but I think if you're just looking at the numbers that Horford's provided so far, I mean, the guy's come in, he's averaged 14.4 points, 10.4 rebounds, 3.2 blocks. The 3.2 blocks is definitely a little high, and that's probably on the way down at some point, but I think having that guy who can come in there besides Robert Williams and protect the paint and then stretch, especially in the playoffs, is going to be super valuable for them. So I think integrating Horford back into the offense will kind of pay its dues as time goes on. But I think Marcus Smart is definitely on to something when he says we need to be less selfish, because when I watch them play so far, from what I've seen, it does look like every time Tatum gets the ball, he's looking to shoot. Same thing with Jaylen Brown. And I think I'm in agreement with you that if the ball's moving, organic offense tends to kind of happen, and you'll see the shooting percentage just go up. Now, this is kind of a segue into the next point I wanted to make, which is I saw this article that wasn't necessarily an article, but it was a picture and a statistic. The NBA three-point percentage is actually down to its lowest it's ever been since 1998 to start the year. Now, granted, we're still very early into the season, but from my understanding, there's been a little bit of frustration with the new Wilson ball. And not to throw Wilson under the bus here or anything, but I think it's definitely worth mentioning. The ball appears to be softer and kind of more broken in, I guess, off rip. And some players are saying that it's actually affecting their shooting touch and kind of getting used to such a soft ball. Now, on the contrary, you have guys like Steph Curry who are still shooting at a super high clip, and you have guys like Giannis who are shooting at an even better percentage. So, Do you think this has anything to do with the ball switch, or do you think this is just simply that teams are kind of coming back into a new season and shooting the ball poorly?
I think no, I don't buy into the ball switch thing. I mean, I know some players probably are more sensitive to it than others. I'm not saying that it makes absolutely no difference. It probably does. I mean, yeah, it probably does. But I think overall, what's happening is that players can't rely on getting cheap fouls at the rim anymore, and defenses are getting away with more physicality. And I think that's really what the difference has been. So the team defenses are way more effective,
Right.
and it's making just everything harder on shooters, just overall. And I think it's a good thing. I really do. And I also expect the percentages to come back. Like I don't think they're going to be low like this all year. I think a lot of the players that I think there's a lot of star players that have started with poor shooting numbers that will even out eventually. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. But to answer your question, no, I wouldn't put it all on the ball. If it's my opinion, I think it's more just team defenses playing better,
Right.
or being allowed to play more physical
Because of
and play better.
Because of the rule changes, right? Because of
Exactly.
Okay. That's probably a more likely outcome than a ball switch. I think it was worth mentioning because I saw it, but I wanted to get your take on if you're buying that or not.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I'll throw in there too is like I haven't looked this up, but I would guess that block numbers and steal numbers are way up, higher than they've ever been as well.
They appear to be. They appear to be. I'm just thinking, just off the top of my head, thinking of guys like Gary Trent averaging like 2.8, Horford's blocks being way up. A lot of people defensively having higher numbers, and I guess you could associate that to less calls, right? Less foul calls on some of these plays that might have been blocks before, right?
Exactly.
That are now not getting called. So I think you're onto something there for sure. I want to get into the Kia rookie ladder here because to kind of a positive surprise. Now, granted, he is dealing with a thumb injury. Scottie Barnes is currently leading the race for Rookie of the Year. I think it's deservedly so. He's played absolutely phenomenal. He's looked like someone who's been in the league for several years, and just the role that he's been given on this Raptors team out the gate has been obviously kind of helped his situation.
I think you could argue that he's been the MVP of the Raptors overall.
Yeah,
so far.
I mean, in terms of when I'm watching them play, from an excitement standpoint, and just from someone who's I'm a confidence level, I really see something different with him that I haven't seen in the last couple of years of watching them. Now, we haven't seen him integrated with Pascal Siakam. There is news that Siakam will be joining the team in the next week and a half, 2 weeks. How is that going to affect Scottie's usage, and how is that going to affect shot distribution on the Toronto Raptors?
You know what? I'm not worried about that whatsoever. I think, if anything, it's just more assists potential for Scottie Barnes, which is probably what's going to happen. Like Scottie gets his points mainly off, hustle, like getting steals, running the fast break, offensive rebounds, things like that. He's been getting to the line, like getting inside more and doing it on his own a little bit more now, which is really nice to see. But I think having Pascal back, if anything, it's just going to give him more room, give him somebody to dish out to. I don't see how that could possibly hurt him. I think it's going to be great for him and for the Raptors.
Do you think Pascal will be leading this team in shots taken? Do you think that will kind of be something that's set in stone, is that he will take the most shots once he comes back? Or do you think it's going to be kind of like a Spurs organic ball movement system where anyone who's hot will get their looks, essentially?
I mean, definitely that second part, because from what we've seen from the Raptors so far, like their half-court offense is pretty nasty. It's not really nice. When they get the ball humming, it can look good, but that's basically the only option they have to play, because they don't really have, Scottie was doing it a bit, but they don't really have a guy right now that can just take over the game. Now, I know OG Anunoby had a career night against New York.
Yeah, 36, so I believe.
Maybe by the end of the year, he's doing that more consistently, which I'd totally be fine with. But for the most part, this is a team that's going to score by playing aggressive, hard defense, getting steals, getting stops, and running the break, and hustle stats, which is super fun to watch, and it's not unheard of for a young team to do it that way. So, as far as Pascal getting all the shots, I mean, probably he will, or at least take the majority of it. I think it's going to be like Scotty, Pascal, OG, Scotty, and Fred will probably take the majority of the shots as they should. That'll be like the tier one, and then everybody else will kind of work off them to get their shots for in the second tier. And every game, there's always one guy that kind of stands out. Svi had a great game in New York after starting. I think he can do that pretty much all the time. Gary Trent's always a danger to get hot. So I don't think it's going to be set that Pascal is going to be like everything's going to run through him all the time. I think it'll end up that way because our half-court offense needs it. But yeah, no, I think for the most part it'll be kind of spread out.
Okay, cool. How concerned should we be about Scotty's thumb injury? He's been ruled out 24 hours in advance. Do you think this is just rookie precaution, similar to what we saw with Kade and that ankle at the beginning of the year? Or do you think this is something that could linger for a little bit and be kind of an annoying injury?
I mean, I was a little worried when I saw it happen. It happened right at the end of the game. And he was definitely favoring his thumb. Or his hand. I wasn't sure if it was what it was, but I could tell that he was favoring his hand. He did a end game interview, and he couldn't. He asked the person to help him take off his headset because he wasn't able to hold it. So that was a little scary. But at the same time, I mean, it sounds like what are they calling not dislocated, but a sprained thumb or something like that.
Yeah, right thumb sprain.
So. I mean, already his shooting wasn't perfect anyway, so I'm not really worried about that. I think he's got the right attitude that he's just gonna shoot anyways, and he'll play through it. So overall, I'm not too worried about it. If he was a sharpshooter, I would be. But in his case, like he does so many other things besides shooting that make him so valuable that I'm not really worried about it. No, I think it's more precaution that they're holding him out. Yeah.
On the year, he's averaging 18 points, 9 rebounds, 0.7 steals, 0.6 blocks, hits some threes. I think the most notable, obviously, would be the field goal percentage, 55% from field. You see that sticking just based on the way he plays and not shooting the ball so much, like from deep? Like,
absolutely.
You think that's going to stay high?
Yeah, because even when he does shoot and when he is taking those threes, it's always in the rhythm of the game. It's very, very rare that it looks like he's rushing or trying too hard to get his shot. You know what I mean? When he gets hot, he'll take those little extra shots, those little heat checks, which for him could be like a mid-range shot. You know what I mean? But it's always in rhythm and it's always according to the flow of the game. So yeah, people that play like that, I do expect him to have a high field goal percentage. Like I said, he gets a lot of stuff down low. For me, one of the most eye-opening parts of his game that I didn't realize he had was his low post scoring. I mean, like when he gets it down there, whether it's a fast break or he just kind of sneaks his way in the post, like he's got moves, man. Like over the left shoulder, over the right shoulder. I think his first bucket was like a sweeping sky hook. Yeah. It's just like he just finds the way to score, and players like that. I mean. Yeah, he won't have any problems. He won't have any problems because if he's missing it anyway, he's getting the board and putting it right back.
I want to move to another rookie who made his debut a few nights ago and so far has struggled immensely. This is Kade Cunningham I'm talking about, the number 1 pick. So far on the year, I mean, just absolutely brutal shooting percentages. It's been 2 games, so we don't want to obviously overreact. A lot of criticism coming his way, a lot of naysayers saying, bust, flop, whatever. Do you think a lot of this has to do with just how well these other rookies like Scotty Barnes, Franz Wagner, Evan Mobley have been playing? Do you think we see Kade kind of bounce back relatively soon? Or do you think this is something that could be kind of something that lingers a little longer than expected for this number 1 pick? Because everything we heard about this guy was that he's the most NBA-ready prospect that we've seen in years. Coming into the NBA, he should be kind of an instant 15-5-5 at least. I've been a little bit concerned, and again, it's been 2 games. I don't want to jump ship here, but I've been a little bit concerned with just kind of the level of confidence that we've seen. Do you think this is just simply him taking a lot of time off, not playing preseason, and getting his legs under him, or do you think this is a little bit of a mental thing with how good these rookies have performed?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I mean, probably the most important thing I would say is like, I mean, I'm not sure that Kade Cunningham is going to be like a absolute superstar. I wasn't really sure on that before the draft. I could see how on paper it looks that way, and he's kind of got all the tools to ensure that. So I definitely understand where people are coming from. Now, that's not to say that I don't think he can be a good, even a great player in the league. That's not to say that at all. But I'm not particularly surprised that it's taking him some time to adjust and get there. And I mean, again, like you said it twice now, and it's the truth. It's only been a couple games. Give the kid a break. He's coming in like this, like not really fresh. Everybody's been playing. They've got some games under them. Everybody that he's going up against. Plus, he's playing that tough guard position. Plus, when a player comes in with all that hype, you bet your ass that all those other players want to knock him down a peg.
For sure.
So I don't think it's too surprising that he's struggling a bit for those reasons. But at the same time, I expect him to push through it, and he'll be okay. I mean, do I think he's going to be an all-star this year or next year? I mean, I think probably not. But at the end of the day, does he have the talent and the work ethic to do it? Yeah, I would say he probably does. So give it time. He'll be all right. He'll be okay. I wouldn't worry too much about Cade.
I think yeah, like you said, I think it's a little harsh to react after only 2 games, but I think a lot of this falls on just how well these rookies have been playing. Scotty obviously being the one we've probably watched most and we've been the most excited for, but even guys down to like Franz Wagner, Chris Duarte, there's so many players that seem to kind of have found their own so early on that it definitely, I think, creates a level of pressure, especially when you're that, like you said,
Absolutely.
that number one pick. There's a lot of people that are like, yo, okay, you went number one. I'm going to show you why I should be number one. And it kind of helps get you a little bit of a boost when you're coming about it from that angle.
Another thing too, if you don't mind that I'll just hop in there, is that sure. He's playing for Dwayne Casey.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That's a good point.
And Dwayne Casey, well, love Dwayne Casey. Okay, one of my favorite coaches. Love the guy. But Dwayne was never one to really rely on his rookies or, set his rookies up to. Not necessarily to succeed, but like set them up to kind of be the stars of the team. He was never really that type of coach. He's got a bit more of an old school mentality, which I respect, and that's totally fine. I'm not trying to knock that at all. Just trying to point out that, if he was in Houston, for example, I think that they are kind of putting an emphasis on the young players and letting them kind of run the show, whereas in Detroit, Dwayne Casey, I think, is a little more hesitant to that. So I think that's playing a part in it too.
Do you think that could be a little bit detrimental to the Cade's growth, though? Having a coach like Casey, I hate to say it, but at the same time, if you're given the keys and you're a guy like Jalen Green,
it depends how he reacts to it. It depends how he reacts to it. That would be my answer, because it's not like he's not going to get the chance. Like, I'm pretty sure he's still going to be the starting point guard every night. Or a starting guard every night. So I don't think he's going to be missing opportunities or anything. It's just that maybe he'll have a little bit of a shorter leash than you would if he was somewhere else. Like I said, I think it depends how he adapts to that and how he accepts it. It might just motivate him to pick his spots a little bit more and make and take his opportunities, or not take his opportunities for granted.
Right.
So it could go both ways.
I want to move on to Zion Williamson, New Orleans Pelicans. Starting the year off horribly. They are sitting currently at 1-7, bottom of the West, very last team in the NBA. Brandon Ingram dealing with a hip injury as of now.
Could be a nail in the coffin already.
Yeah, a lot of kind of negative news, I guess, to start the year off in New Orleans. Do you think?
Plus, the alternate jerseys suck, man. Sorry, did you see those city jerseys that came out?
I saw them. I didn't see the New Orleans ones though.
Well, they basically look. Oh, anyways, I know this is a tangent there, but I mean, would be nice to just have something to be excited about, but then you see their city jerseys and it's like, dude, like I could have made that like in
Yeah.
Microsoft Paint or even in 2K in the created jersey, I could have made
Yeah.
something better than that. So yeah,
Um,
New Orleans, everything to me about New Orleans right now is just it doesn't sound so exciting. It doesn't sound so fun if you're a Pelicans fan. I think their best part of their team right now for me is Jonas.
yeah,
That
well,
would be
you
the
know what?
exciting
I
thing.
was gonna say the one bright spot that I can think of is how well JV's been playing. I think in fantasy perspective, this guy's been like a top 7, top 8 player. So absolutely putting up huge numbers. So it seems like that trade could obviously pay dividends, at least in terms of getting, because he's bringing energy every single night, and that's what this team really does need, in my opinion. Um, I
It'd be
guess.
nice if you had Lonzo giving him a little pick and roll.
Well, that's it, right? I guess my question for you would be this: how do you think they utilize JV when Zion returns to the lineup in presumably 2 to 3 weeks? But at this rate, can we even trust what New Orleans is telling us about Zion? Because I mean, if we go back to just the summer, they were saying he should be ready for the start of the season, and it's not even close to that time frame. So I don't even know what they were basing that time frame off of, if there was a setback. And then obviously there's been a lot of talk about how heavy he's gotten. Last night there was a segment on TNT. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it was Charles Barkley and Shaq basically joking that they had a
Oh
baby.
no.
They had a baby, and it was Zion. And they're basically just saying that he's way too big, and there's been tons of takes on that and his weight. Do you think Zion?
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that Zion's not taking his diet serious enough, or do you
I
think
think I think
this?
it's definitely a conversation that I'm very surprised that's happening. But I think at this point you gotta wonder that. I mean, how could you not?
Right? Do you think? I mean, this is the my point. My point of emphasis here is no excuses, in the sense that if you're Zion Williamson playing for the Pelicans, you gotta think that they've offered him trainers, nutritionists, chef. I'm sure they've offered all these tools to him. So this has to be an apparent, purposeful choice made by Zion to ignore this. And then clearly it's affecting his knees, his foot, his lower body. Is it safe to say that if Zion doesn't cut weight here, we're looking at possibly I hate to say it, but a Greg Oden type player? I hate to put him in that conversation right now, but it's
I think it'd be more like Sean Kemp.
mm,
It's giving me a lot of Sean Kemp vibes. Who for the youngins out there, he played with Seattle like in the I think it was the late '90s, and I think initially he was kind of a beast like Zion, you know what I mean?
oh
But
yeah,
later on in his career, he ended up having. I mean, there were other difficulties, but weight problems were definitely part of it. And he went from being like a super athletic, super strong player, power forward type guy to a little bit bigger, plotting, a little bit more. Um, didn't really rely on that same athleticism anymore towards the end of his career, and maybe a lot sooner than most players because of his weight. So yeah, it's concerning. It's really concerning. I mean, especially with a guy like Zion. I mean, with all the hype that was around him and the clear athletic gifts and talent that he has. It would kind of be a shame to think that he's not putting the effort in to take care of himself and make sure that he has a long career. I mean, I don't know. I'm surprised. I mean, I guess I didn't really think about it enough, but I didn't really think that it would be an issue for him. And if that does become an issue, yeah, as far as New Orleans, super concerning. I mean, to the point where if that's the case, I think they should probably think of trading him. And the reason I'm saying that is because if he's not taking care of himself, for one, do you really want your number one guy to be someone that doesn't take it seriously like that? But then the other thing is, if it keeps going like this, they're not giving him any reason to stay in New Orleans. I'd be shocked if he stayed in New Orleans past this contract. So at some point, you got to cut your losses, right? And it seems
right.
so weird to say that about Zion Williamson, but man, it's a business too, right? And you got to make these tough choices.
And obviously with John Morant playing so well, for Memphis, and looking like he's taken a full leap forward. While we haven't even seen what Zion's done this year, and obviously we can't really touch on what Zion has done if he hasn't played, but that obviously kind of rubs into this whole thing, or it's kind of like throwing salt on the wound in a sense, based on obviously where Zion was drafted and the hype around Zion.
Absolutely. And the fact that they've been looking for a point guard all summer and they didn't get any, or they got Devontae Graham, but
I think a player that I wanted to touch on, actually two players playing with Zion at Duke, R.J. Barrett and Cameron Reddish. Both also look like they've taken a bit of a step forward so far this year. I mean, R.J. Barrett's looked pretty good. I think he dropped a career high the other night, if I'm not mistaken. And you also have Cam Reddish coming off the bench for Atlanta and playing relatively well. So
I love Cam Reddish.
Yeah, so I think that's not helping this whole Zion fiasco as of now in terms of, when you look at his surroundings and the players that came out of that class around him and, seeing these guys flourish, and then we don't even get to see a glimpse of what Zion can do this year. Because I had pretty big expectations for Zion myself this year, but, the more and more I see of footage of him on the sideline running and practicing and in commercials and just, just his demeanor and his overall weight, I hate to say it, and you don't want to rip a guy because of his weight, but with a guy who's having lower body injuries, it's got to be discussed and it's got to be talked about. And like you said, I don't think it's totally out of the realm here to see a trade within the next few years if New Orleans isn't kind of in agreement with what's going on here. Because everything I've heard is nutritionists, chefs, dietitians have all been offered to Zion and it's all been declined. So I don't think that's something that you can really say at that point is the fault of New Orleans. If they're giving you those resources and you're choosing not to take them, that's got to fall on Zion. I'm sorry. It just has to fall on Zion. So
no doubt. And I mean, an important thing about Zion too is that like when you're comparing him to like a John Morant or like an RJ Barrett, it's hard to not think like, oh shit, maybe we made a bad move there. But having said that, even with everything going on, at the end of the day, when he's good, Zion Williamson can do things that not only John Morant and RJ Barrett can't do, but like almost nobody in the NBA can do.
Yeah.
And that's the whole reason why he went number one. That's the whole reason why this discussion is so strange to have. And that's not going to change. So like he's going to have to either prove the people that are saying this kind of stuff about him wrong, or prove them right. But like you just said, this is going to be on him. And I still believe that if he can get back to it this year, he can shut up a lot of doubters. I really think he can. But it's going to take a little bit more now because he's dug himself a little bit of a hole.
That's a good point. I wanted to go into some numbers here, get a little more analytical, just based on what's happened so far in the NBA. And basically, I'll read to you kind of the league leaders in these certain categories, and I'm just curious if you think that this is a realistic expectation in terms of maintaining this level of performance. So currently sitting at top of the points per game field, we have Stephen Curry leading the league with 28.7, and we have Paul George at 28.3. We also tied 28.3 would be Ja Morant. Do you think Ja can keep this level of efficient scoring up, or do you think we see a slight dip in the scoring as the weeks go on here? Because I think Steph Curry and Paul George, pretty safe to say they'll be around the 28 mark, maybe even higher. But Ja, I could see kind of coming down a little bit from that 28.3. Do you think that's realistic to say?
I mean, maybe. I don't think there's any harm in saying that. I think that would make sense. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be shocked either to see him kind of keep this up because what he's doing, although it's not too different from last year, what he's doing this year is like he's really saying like I'm the alpha. This is my team. And you're not beating the Grizzlies. You're beating me, and then you're beating the Grizzlies. You know what I mean? And that might sound like a weird thing to say, but what I'm trying to say is I don't think that attitude is going to change. In fact, I think he's like solidifying it this year. So I don't see really any reason for his production to come down unless he just goes through some significant shooting slumps, which could happen for sure. But I think his mindset's going to be the same all year. So I don't expect it, to be honest. I don't expect it, if I had to bet, to move around too much. Maybe come down a little bit, but I don't think I don't think he's going to finish under 25 points a game. Maybe, let's put it that way.
Sure. What do you think or let me rephrase this. Is there a certain level of concern that we should be feeling towards the play of Damien Lillard so far? Because from what I've seen, this does not look like the same Lillard that we saw last year or, I guess pre-injury in the Olympics. I think he's dealing with an apparent abdominal injury, if I'm not mistaken. But do you think that this is simply just Dame fighting injury, or do you think there's something a little bit more going on there mentally and maybe, with the whole Portland storyline that isn't really being touched on?
Yeah, I think. Well, if he does, I didn't realize he had an injury. If he does, I mean, that's definitely playing a part. I think number one again is the way the game's being called, and it's changing the rhythm of a lot of these scores, what these scorers like to do. Because if you have a poor shooting night, it's a lot easier to stomach if you know that you can still get to the line 10 times a game, in your sleep. But that's just not happening anymore, and that's going to affect the rest of their game. So I think that's probably still number one. Any injuries or things like that probably falls into number two. They do have a new coach, and and that can be a detriment. Sometimes if I love Chauncey Billups, all right. I'm not saying that, and I haven't watched a Blazers game completely, so I can't really judge him as far as being a coach. But we've seen a million times where a new coach comes in and it doesn't work. We've seen it the other way too. Sometimes it just kind of happens that way. I would be really surprised if Damian Lillard didn't get back to his regular old self by the time the playoffs come around. I'd be really shocked. I don't think that I don't think this is like exposing him that he's actually hasn't been as good as we think he has. I think he's going to get back to it. I'm totally sure. But there are, you kind of touched on it, and there are other factors, outside of basketball. That whole kind of, it wasn't really a fiasco, but that whole stuff in the summer about everybody thinking he's going to be moved, and it sounds like he's been going through a lot, thinking about a lot of stuff. So that's probably carrying it into the games a little bit too. So I think there's just a lot going on with him. But number one, I would say is the way they're calling the game now. I still think that's what's affecting most of these players.
I wanted to touch on someone who's been shooting the ball at an absolutely ridiculous clip, Carmelo Anthony, and defensively putting up what looks like career numbers. That's probably going to come down, I would guess, as the year goes on. Do you think Melo can maintain this level of play? Because currently he is shooting 52.9% from three-point percent, or his three-point percentage is 52.9%. He's not leading the NBA, so there are a few people higher than him, like Kemba Walker's been doing really well, Eric Gordon, Seth Curry. But I think Melo's worth noting on this list just because I think, he's been last year in Portland too, 40% kind of three-point shooter. Do you think Carmelo can keep this level of efficient scoring up with this Lakers team, or do you think this is kind of a hot start for Melo?
No, I'm all in. I think he's going to keep it up. I think it's re-energized him playing with LeBron, playing in LA. I think this is exactly the kind of the best possible way for him to kind of cap off his career. And I think everything's coming into place. I think he's in a perfect role. He's getting put in the perfect positions to be effective. It's reminding me of when he's on the Olympic team.
Yeah.
Where he's not. While he was definitely one of the most talented on the floor, he was never really like the alpha guy on the Olympics. But he ends up scoring a lot because the alpha guys are the ones that are attracting all the attention. And then, who's there for the spot up three? Carmelo Anthony, baby, and he's going to hit it.
Right. Who's your favorite to win the NBA championship from what you've seen so far?
Scotty Barnes. On his own.
Give me your West and your East. Give me your finals, how about?
Okay, you know what? I'll give you the East. I don't know. The East is tough to say because I feel like the East is Well, you could say this about the whole league, I guess. But before I answer, I just want to say I think that the league is in a really, really great place right now. The way they're calling the games is one thing for sure, but it just seems like, don't you just feel like so many more teams have a chance right now?
Yeah, I do.
Than others, and it's not necessarily because there's like everybody's got a super team now. It's just like every team has their own kind of thing, and it's very a lot more equal across the league. So it's really exciting. So that's why this question is tough. But man, I'll tell you one thing that I can't shake. I can't shake it at all, and it's that Luka Doncic and the Mavericks, bro. Like,
yeah,
I think that Luka has played just amazing in the playoffs the last 2 years, but I think also, he's had to go up against Kawhi and the Clippers for 2 years in a row. They've had the bad luck of doing that. And I think this year doesn't look like he's going to have to go through them. So I think we might, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Mavs in the finals. I really wouldn't. I think,
wow.
Yeah, no, I'm serious, man. Like I'm not saying I would bet on it or anything like that, but I like their chances. I like the idea, and I think that Luka is just going to keep getting better, and without having to go through Kawhi and the Clippers this year, assuming they won't have to. I think all the other teams in the West are going to find out what it's been about, and it's going to be scary.
He's definitely a different animal in the playoffs. I think there's been a little bit of struggling early on into his season, especially with shooting the ball, but I think you can say that about pretty much everyone. My main concern with that team as of now would be kind of that same old Porzingis storyline. It appears he's battling injury once again. It appears that he's kind of on that microwave, on and off, inconsistent. I think now he's dealing with his back injury. So far this year, he's averaged 12 points per game, 30% shooting. He's blocking the ball well, but I think that's obviously got to be something worth mentioning. Do you think Porzingis has what it takes to step up for this team in the playoffs and be a real contributor?
I think so, yeah. But I think Luka is just so much on another level that it almost won't matter.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
he's hoisted the team on his back, and like you said, he's played. These aren't scrubs he was beating in the playoffs and playing well against. It was the Clippers and Kawhi. So I think, that's definitely worth, giving him credit.
Like it took Kawhi last year, anyways, in that first round series, which is insane that was a first round series, but it took the absolute best of Kawhi for the Clippers to win. Like there's no sugarcoating that. There's nothing around. Kawhi had to take it to basically the best he's ever played, and show flashes of that again to beat them.
Right.
And that's Luka, man. Like I do want to give props to Tim Hardaway Jr., who especially in that series, he just seemed to hit those big time shots that they needed, like probably how they imagined Kristaps would be. It's Tim Hardaway that was hitting those shots. So
yeah.
I'm not saying Luka's doing it completely on his own, but the same way that Kawhi wasn't doing it on his own, if you take Kawhi off the team, if you take Luka off the team, it's completely different.
Right. Let's move to the Charlotte Hornets, LaMelo Ball. A little fun statistic. I think in the first 7-8 games, whatever it's been, he's had more 30-point games so far this season than he did in his rookie year. What's LaMelo's ceiling to you? Because I think I wasn't expecting LaMelo to be this good this early. I would probably have expected what we saw at the end of last year, LaMelo, to kind of be what we saw at the beginning of this year. But so far, LaMelo has looked really, really, really good. Do you think he's a superstar, or do you think it's fair to say LaMelo Ball is a superstar in the NBA, or do you think that's a little jumping or kind of, is that a little too early to call?
I think it's fair. I think I don't know if I would say that he is a superstar, but he's definitely to me showing that's the trajectory. Like there's practically no doubt in my mind.
And Anthony Edwards, I guess, is the other guy you got to kind of draw comparisons to, 'cause same draft class,
Mm-hmm.
number one pick.
Sure.
Ants looked really good as well. I've asked you this before, but I'm curious on your take as of now, based on what you've seen from last year into this year. If you were starting a team, you would start around LaMelo, would you not?
If those are my two options,
Yeah.
I think I would go with LaMelo. Yeah, if I'm starting a team.
If you're the Timberwolves, D'Angelo Russell's rolled his ankle. He's dealing with an ankle injury. It seems to be kind of a trend that this guy's injury prone. At this point, I think we can all kind of say that.
A little bit, yeah.
Is trading D'Lo something that you're looking to do before this year's deadline? Is that a realistic thing? Is that kind of becoming the inevitable kind of move that this team needs to make in order to take another step forward?
Well, let me ask you two questions with that, because I think at the end of the day, you always have to, if you're a good GM, a good front office, you always have to look at that, and you always have to see what's available, and make sure you're kind of balancing all those options at the same time. But that's the real question is one. So who, if you're the Timberwolves, clearly you've thought about this a bit. Who or what kind of player are you looking for D'Angelo Russell? And two, which is probably ends up being the most important question, is what team do you think wants D'Angelo Russell?
Well, I think that's the harder question to answer, is what team wants D'Angelo Russell at this given point, just based on contract, injury, the way he plays.
Sell.
It's a tougher sell. Now, what kind of a player do I want with those two, Ant and Cat? I'd probably be looking for someone who can. So the main question I have with that is, can Anthony Edwards be good enough to have the ball in his hands and for the team to win? Because I'm not sure he's that level of a facilitator that he can dictate an offense. I think he's an absolutely lethal scorer. I think he's going to be a phenomenal two-way player. I don't know if he has what it takes to necessarily run an offense. So I think I'd be looking for a little bit more of a pass-first point guard, someone less kind of shot antsy than D'Lo. Trying to give me, I'm trying to think
like
of
Alonzo Ball,
like exactly like Alonzo, someone who's looking to make the pass first, who can hit the three, maybe catch and shoot, but really just kind of be a guy who can facilitate that offense. I think Lonzo is like the perfect kind of nail on the head fit. If you could ideally get a guy like Lonzo, that would be kind of what
who would be a great fit. I'll give you two, but they're kind of the same. But like Kyle Lowry would have been a perfect fit for them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Especially to get that veteran presence for Cat and for Ant. And if you say Kyle, like to me, they're almost the same player. But like a guy like Chris Paul, same thing.
Yeah. Ideally, someone like that, right? Like a pass first, but can hit the three, play great defense, kind of, annoying, kind of not fun to play against. That's the kind of guy they need. D'Lo to me is a guy who's just going to go look to score, and I think that's the problem. It's a similar kind of Celtics vibe I get, where it's like everyone on the team, and Ant actually called this out pretty early on, and I was pretty impressed with him, having the audacity to kind of call the team out at, being this, such a young player. But he basically said, we're not going to win if we don't look to pass. Right now, all we're doing is looking to score. We get the ball, and he was speaking about himself in this as well. And I think, to have that kind of self-awareness that's going on, and calling that out, and being such a young player to call that out, I think it's super important. And I think you're right. Like, I think they need someone who's going to be willing to facilitate the basketball. I don't think D'Angelo Russell, I don't think that's necessarily, he can pass the ball, but I don't think that's his strength, right? His strength is always going to be he's looking to score. That's what he wants to do. He feels he's best at that. So I think Alonzo Ball, a Lowry, a Chris Paul, obviously those kind of players are hard to come by. But
what about Ben Simmons?
That's interesting to me, because I think that on paper works really, really well. I think the hard thing with that, because also defensively what Simmons can provide is a whole other story. But I think the hard thing is, can you sell D'Lo to Philly?
It's a hard sell.
Can you sell D'Lo and Embiid meshing and working well? Because maybe, because
I think you can. I think the issue there, sorry to cut you off, but I think the issue there would be more on the defensive side that I'd be worried about.
Right.
But, if you're Philly, then maybe if it's not a one-for-one swap, maybe if you're getting D'Lo Maybe they want to throw in a pick, but maybe, I mean, they've got another young guy, that McDaniels, like if they want to throw him in there,
It's very true.
it starts to get it pretty appealing. Now, having said that, I don't know if Minnesota's interested in that, if they're interested in throwing both those guys in there. Obviously I don't know.
Yeah. How do they value McDaniels? That's what we would have to kind of to see, because it's McDaniels. He's so young and so raw that I'm not saying he's going to be an all-star.
Could use that, especially on the wing. They could use a little bit of youth.
Yeah, for sure.
A little bit of unknown.
For sure. That's a good point. But I think that does fall into the category of, can Philly buy into this working with D'Lo? And I'm not sure it does. Now, mind you, if D'Lo's shooting the ball, I think obviously you have guys like Embiid and you have Drummond there. Great rebounders.
It's not a bad fit. Not a bad fit.
Great rebounders, right? So that I could see being kind of a bright spot. And I've been really impressed, actually. I wanted to touch on this because we didn't really touch on Philly yet. But obviously Ben Simmons hasn't returned to the team. They've been a little bit depleted. But I've been really, really impressed with what I've seen from Andre Drummond so far. And I want to give the guy kudos, because as a Lakers fan and as someone who watched him play for the Lakers and was kind of, I just wasn't impressed at all with the way he played and his awareness level. I think for me, the bright spot I've seen with Drummond so far, obviously he's playing limited minutes behind Embiid, but I think it's just a level of assertiveness, and his ability to make the right pass has been really, really impressive to me. So I think Drummond, surprisingly,
you're right about that passing, eh? That's a really good point.
Yeah,
he's a very good passer.
Yeah, underrated, and I think we forget that the guy is capable of being one of the best rebounders in the NBA given the minutes. And I think he's not necessarily as useless, I hate to use that word, but as people thought he was. And I think, when because Embiid's been dealing with some knee stuff, and he rested the other night, and Philly got the win. And a lot of that, I think, you got to give credit where credit's due, was because of Andre Drummond. He
had a great game, yeah.
Yeah, Tobias was out with COVID. He put up a double-double with 7 assists, 5 steals. I think it was a record-breaking line. Last person to do something like that was Charles Barkley. So I've been very impressed with what I've seen from Drummond in limited time. I think, and I would obviously like to I would hope that he gets an opportunity to kind of prove himself more. It's going to be hard coming, behind Embiid, but I think that's a nice little bench center they got there, and that's not really worth just brushing necessarily under the rug as nothing. So I think I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Drummond so far.
Oh man, me too. And to your point, I mean, I was hoping the Raps signed him in the offseason. And I'm still surprised they weren't able to sell that to him, because he would have started for us.
Yeah, and he would have been a great fit. The way he's
affecting the game, that would have been awesome.
Great fit for Toronto. And I think a lot of teams are kind of realizing, like, damn, we shouldn't have necessarily, discarded this guy as nothing, because he's definitely, and I think the one that, like I said, the passing is the big one for me, that I'm like, damn, this guy can really make the right pass. A lot of the times he'll make the smart pass, and that's not worth not noting. So, yeah. I guess sticking with Philly, do you think Ben Simmons is going to be back anytime soon here? Because
I thought I read that he's coming back like next week or something.
Well, we keep hearing stuff like that, but now I'm seeing a report on the Score that's saying that Philly's fed up with how long it's taking, and teammates are getting fed up with the length of time that it's taking. So,
they should be getting fed up. I'd be getting fed up too.
Report: 76ers frustrated with Simmons' progress of returning.
Well, I want to tell you one thing, okay? And I'm not going to dive in too deep there, because I don't want to stir the pot too much. But please correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But I'm pretty sure I read that Ben Simmons is not taking the help, like the mental health help that Philly is trying to provide for him. And to be honest, I have a pretty big problem with that. Because if you're going to go out on record and say that you have got mental health issues, and I applaud people for doing that, standing up, and anyway, let's not get into that. But if you're going to do that and not take the help associated with it, I think that's I just don't think that adds up to me. That's I don't know. That just really, if that's true, again, correct me if I'm wrong, if you know any different.
No, but I haven't heard anything about him not taking help or anything like that. But
that would be a big red flag for me.
Yeah, and I think rightfully so. I
to
mean,
add to his collection.
right. Yeah. Um, I think for me, it's really going to come down to the level of like pace he plays at, the level of assertiveness he has. Because I'm very curious to see, it's it's one of those real big question marks because for a guy who just facilitates the ball and that's the way he plays, to be that guy for your team, you'd have to think that everyone needs to be bought into what you're doing and want to,
Absolutely.
to be willing for you to make that pass and willing to set them up and like that's got to be a leadership role when you're running that like
You hit the nail on the head, man. 100%,
so
100%.
it's
And
like
even if he wasn't a point guard,
yeah
like for any team that you play for, if your teammates don't feel that you care,
right
it's as simple as that. Then how can you expect them to play with you and to respect you or you know what I mean? Like
yeah yeah
it starts and ends right there, if you ask me.
no 100%. There's not really too much else I had for today. We are about to we just hit the hour. Is there anything that sticks out from with what you've seen this last week since we last went here that you wanted to touch on? Is there anything that I've missed? Is there anything you can think of? I mean, we talked about, pretty much everything I had written down, but like some notable guys here just on this list. Gary Trent Jr. averaging 2.8 steals a game.
I'll tell you one thing I like talking about Gary Trent Jr. is I don't know if it's still the case, but I know during the New York game they put it up on the board there so you could see it. But in the league for deflections, number 1 is Fred VanVleet, number 2 was Gary Trent Jr.
Wow.
And first thing I'm going to say is that's because of the way the Raptors play and their play style this year, and I fucking love it. Like, how can you not cheer for that?
Yeah.
They're going to be in every game as long as they keep this up. They might not. I might not expect them to win every game, but they're going to be in every game. It's really hard to blow out a team that plays like that. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But number 2, big time respect to Gary Trent Jr. Man, this guy has like this word gets thrown around a lot, but like in my opinion, this guy's kind of reinvented himself. I mean, has he ever been known as a defensive player? I don't think so.
I think there was like when he got traded, I remember hearing that he had that possible skill set that was developing, like he good on ball defense,
enough.
But it wasn't at this level.
Well, we never saw anything like this. Like I expect him like every game from what I've seen, obviously, but he gets one of those steals at the top when the other team is setting up their half court offense.
Yeah.
And let's say the big gets it at the top of the key or the at the elbow or whatever, he'll get in there, dig, and he gets that steal, and that turns into a fast break, like at least once a game.
Yeah, that's true.
And when he's playing with OG Anunoby, I mean, geez, man,
yeah,
it's so good. And that's why when you throw Scotty Barnes in there on top of it, it's like the offense really, I mean, they have a chance, but they don't have much of a chance. And then you want to throw Pascal Siakam in there too, like holy fuck.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially when Pascal gets back to see how they. To see the defensive potential, I think, is the most exciting for me as a Raptors fan, because I think the sky's the limit, really.
The sky's the limit, but at this point, I think Gary Trent has played well enough now that it's really hard for me to justify taking him out of that starting lineup.
Yeah.
Once Pascal comes back, like initially, I'm thinking, we go Fred, OG, Scotty, Pascal, and Precious, right? And I think even a wrinkle in that one would be to play Scotty at the 1 and keep Fred at the off ball, so that Scotty can guard the opposing point guard. Fred can play the same way he played when Lowry was on the court, and then you just got OG, Pascal, and Precious filling out the rest. But like I said, now it's really hard to imagine Gary Trent Jr. not starting. I mean, he's done everything and more that they've asked, and it's almost to the point now where I think what I want to see is Scottie Barnes at the center spot, which is weird, but I think that's
I agree with you, because then you could have Van Vliet and Trent, you could have OG, Siakam at your 4, and then Scotty is this kind of mobile 5 kind of running 1 at the same time, ball moving,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly. You got those 2 little dynamite guards that are leading the league in deflections and, playing great defense. And then you got the 3-headed monster right behind them. Like,
right. Right, which is the most for me. That's the most exciting. I need to see. That's what I'm most excited for is when we get
I'm
to
sure we
see
will. Yeah.
OG, Siakam, and Scotty all on the floor at the same time playing defense. I want to see how that looks on the perimeter. I want to see how that looks when they switch.
Ooh,
I want to
baby.
see how that looks when like they trap double team because I think it's going to be like relentlessly scary. It's like the term that you hear being thrown around the NBA a lot of the time is we have NBA 2K cheat code defense. Like when you play the Raptors, it's kind of known as like it's going to be a hard game. And especially I've been looking through fantasy comments and when teams are you see comments from people being like, "Oh, they're playing the Raptors tonight. Expect 30% shooting." So add
Am
Siakam
I-
into that mix and I think it's scary hours for sure.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I'm so excited. I like Scotty has been so good now that I'm not even concerned or thinking about the rookie of the year anymore. This guy is giving me like real aspirations, and I'm
Yeah.
not, and like,
Yeah.
and maybe not this year, but like I'm talking like this guy
I don't
is the
care
type of player you that gives you title aspirations, like
down
in
the
the
line.
next couple of years or so.
Exactly. It's like who, what? Quite frankly, if he doesn't win Rookie of the Year, that's fine by me because
I don't care because he's
I'm more
shit.
excited.
He's gonna be on the
Exactly.
all defensive team probably.
Exactly, and I'm more excited to see Scottie Barnes year 2, Scottie Barnes year 3, Scottie Barnes year 4, year 5. What does that
I
look like?
mean, like it's already reminding me of Giannis, and Giannis
Yeah,
at this age was
was
nowhere near what Scotty Barnes is. Nowhere near.
Giannis averaged in his first year 6.8 points in the NBA. Scottie Barnes so far has averaged 18 on 55% shooting. Now, different league, different time, different player,
100%.
but you
But
gotta
at the same
gotta weigh those
he's
similarities, right? Like you gotta compare it.
absolutely I mean, me when we talk about stuff like I especially when we talk about the Raptors, I try to stay more conservative, so I don't get carried away, with hype and stuff. And with young players, I'm always going to hesitate before I start saying how good I think they're going to be or anything like that. Because one, I don't want to jinx it, and two, it's a long season.
Right.
Anything can happen, right? So
Right.
I always try to keep that in mind. But then the other thing that's eating away at me right now is like, yes, that's all true, but those special players, they're special real quick,
It's true.
most of the time. And maybe Giannis is not a good example of that, but for the most part, the ones that stand out first, it's because the special ones stand out quicker too,
Yeah.
and that's the category I think Scotty's falling in.
Yep.
And he's just, I mean, in my opinion, right now, I don't think there's any question he's the best rookie we've ever seen since Vince Carter. And it's not
Yeah, I can't.
really close. I mean, Chris Bosh was great, but he wasn't affecting the game the way Scotty is.
No. I thought for a second you meant in the total of the NBA, and I was like, whoa, chill there. But no, for the Raptors, yeah.
No.
Since Vince, I mean, I can't think of anyone that even competes with him.
Mhm.
I mean, he's obviously it's one of our.
Head and shoulders above the rest.
Yeah,
Right? There's nobody.
No,
There was no
no,
close to
no.
Vince.
He's just so NBA ready too. Like it's wild. So yeah, man, they play Washington tonight. That should be a good little rematch. Like hopefully they can get the win. Scotty probably won't be playing.
Yeah, I think he's up tonight too.
But hopefully we.
OG 40 piece tonight.
Yeah, let's see what OG can do, and let's see how they respond. Beal and Dinwiddie are going to be coming. Gafford returned last game, I believe, so that's going to be something we got to deal with. But yeah, I'm excited. Montrez has been playing really well, so we'll see. But I think it'll be a fun night. A lot of games tonight. I'm really excited for Clippers Timberwolves. I'm really excited, oddly enough, to see Charlotte and Golden State, but that wasn't the one I was saying. Oddly enough, I was really excited to see Boston and Orlando because one little bright spot we didn't touch on with Orlando has been Cole Anthony. I don't know if you've seen kind of the level of play he's been going at, but the rebounding has looked awesome. The three-point shooting has looked awesome, and you got to be pretty excited if you're Orlando because I think a lot of people were probably thinking Suggs is going to come in there and be that guy, but Cole Anthony has looked unbelievable, and I think that's
and it's good because I think Suggs, Suggs is probably a good example or a good comparison with Kade Cunningham right now. Where it's just taking a little bit more time than people figured. But yeah, no, you're exactly right. Like Cole Anthony is just allowing Suggs to
Take his
not
time.
have that much pressure on
Yeah.
him, and that's a good thing. That might be what Cade needs a little bit too.
Yeah. Well, maybe they can get some of that out of Killian Hayes, Sadiq Bey,
Maybe
Isaiah.
Sadiq Bey is really nice.
I like him a lot, and Isaiah Stewart I think is going to be a lot better as the year goes on as well. So I think I think hopefully Killian Hayes can take that step forward. His shots look better, but I still want to see a little bit more. I'm excited to watch Cade these next few games. I'll probably watch every Cade game this year just because I really like his game, and I really just like him as a player and a person. I just think he's a really cool guy. I'm a big fan of his. I kind of ignore the first couple game, horrible shooting, and I can look past that because I've seen spots and little glimpses of things I've liked. So I'm going to probably watch a bunch of Cade. I've watched every Scottie Barnes game, basically. I've watched most of these rookies. I've loved watching Franz Wagner. I think he just looks like an absolute steal for them. Alperen Şengün last night showed a lot of really, really nice stuff. His steal rate has been really, really good. So the rookies, this rookie class is definitely a tier above most. And
it's looking like a special one.
Yeah, and it's evident this early on to be kind of proclaiming that. Jalen Green, I don't know if you saw the shot he hit last night versus the Lakers at the very end there, that super high-arcing three. Just seems like every night we get a new highlight from these rookies, and it's so exciting to be able to watch it and be an NBA fan right now. So, yeah, a lot of really cool stuff. We'll probably cut her there because we're over the hour, but yeah, man, good episode. This is the first episode officially going by the block party. So we're going to be uploading.
It's the block party, baby.
It's the block party, and we'll be uploading this one hopefully to YouTube after this Twitch stream. So look forward to that. Hopefully we can get these on YouTube and have kind of a multi-platform thing going here. So we will try to do this again next Wednesday, 3 p.m. EST on Twitch, and then hopefully upload later that night to YouTube so we can kind of diversify our audience. Man, good talking to you. Always a pleasure. Excited for the Raptors game tonight. Excited for a lot of good games in the NBA tonight. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about next week. And, yeah, same time, same place. We'll see you there. It's Block Party. Let's get it.
Peace.
Peace, bro.